The Prophecy and Spellbook archetypes are two series of cards that, when you put them together, they make the Spellbook Prophecy archetype. The prophecies are made up of a variety of spellcaster type monsters whose effects tend to revolve around acquiring or manipulating the latter half, the spellbooks. The spellbooks are made up entirely of spells and traps, and are designed to supplement the spellcaster type monsters. The spellbooks are based on different tomes and books found throughout history, whereas the prophecy monsters' designs are taken directly from each of the major arcana in a tarot card deck, which makes it the second archetype to do so, the other being of course the Arcana Force series of cards. Now if you're not in the know, tarot cards were originally created as a simple card game back in the 1500s. However, over time they began being associated with occults, eventually being used as a form of divination in order to predict a person's future. Honestly, it does make you wonder if in another 500 years, what if the Yu-Gi-Oh card game goes down this same route? Hello, is this the place we get your prophecies told?
Yes, welcome. Come in.
Okay, brilliant, yeah, can I have my prophecy told, please?
You've come to ask the spirits for information. Luckily, I have just the thing. You see this box? It has been buried for 500 years.
Oh, what does that mean on there?
These words inscribed, commons. It is short for communications with the dead, of course. Sealed inside the box were these magical Yu-Gi-Oh cards. With them we can speak to the spirits. Let us reveal your first card, shall we? Ah yes, the Future Fusion. It shows that the next cards will determine what happens to you in the future.
Oh, okay.
Your second card. Ah yes, the Apple Magician Girl. This will show you will meet a beautiful woman in your future.
Oh, okay, that's pretty good.
This next one, ah yes, a very rare Yu-Gi-Oh card. The Magikarp. Do you fish, sir?
Yeah, I guess I fish a little bit.
Well, you're gonna catch some good fish, that's all that really says. And your final fortune card is...
Ah, he looks cute, that's gotta be a good thing, right?
No, sir. The Jerry Beans man is a great omen. Bad things are going to happen to you, sir. Terrible, terrible things.
Oh no! No! Now, the way that a basic tarot reading works is that each of the cards holds a significant meaning. A person chooses one of the major arcana cards at random, and that card is what now represents you, and is what defines the meaning of the next three minor arcana cards that follow it. The first minor arcana card turned over represents the physical realm, and reveals what is going on in the material world for you. The second card represents the mental realm, and reveals what is going on within your mind, while the third card represents the spiritual realm, and reveals a message from your spirit. We'll learn a little bit more about what each prophecy monster represents later, but for now I want to tell you a little story about this archetype, and it all starts with the most unlikely of people. Fool of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Matt the Magical Fool. His effect is once per turn you can send one Spellbook spell card from your deck to the graveyard. During the end phase of the turn this card activated this effect, you contribute this card, special summon one level 5 or higher dark spellcaster type monster from your deck. You must have 5 or more Spellbook spell cards with different names in your graveyard to activate and to resolve this effect. Based on the Fool Tarot card, each of these cards in the major arcana is also associated with a number. The Fool is special as it can represent both the lowest possible number of 0 or the highest possible number of 22, meaning that both this card and its tarot card equivalent are individuals with infinite potential, and at the same time they also have the potential to squander what they could achieve. For you see, the Fool walks through life carefree, caring little for the dangers ahead. We see in the tarot card the Fool is depicted walking towards the edge of a cliff, ignoring the warnings of the dog barking at his side. We see the significance of the Fool of Prophecy having both a potential for greatness and mediocrity being revealed in the story he takes place in. For you see, the Fool attended the Grand Spellbook Tower, known as Le Mason. It was a place where many spellcasters studied in order to master their craft. 2 libraries resided here. The Selene Library, which contained texts for the study of light magic. These were accessible to everyone. The second was known as the Crescent Library. It was a place to study dark magic. Here, only the chosen members of Le Mason were allowed to read the contents of this place, as here, powerful dark magic swelled within the tomes. knowledge that in the wrong hands could be very easily abused. No physical books actually resided within the walls of the libraries, as magical wisdom recorded onto paper was classed as inefficient. Rather, the thousands of years worth of texts were absorbed into magical stones that could be called upon in an instant using magical terminals. The Fool, despite being a member and allowed access to all the wealths of knowledge within the walls, chose to simply spend his days living without a care in the world, going so far as to not even bother acquiring his own magical terminal to access the information. A decision that one fateful day he would regret, as many years later a neighbouring king of the magical citadel grew jealous of the knowledge amassed in these libraries, believing that such knowledge should be controlled and not given out to any and all who seeked it. And so, one day, he and his men invaded the Grand Spellbook Tower. The battle was fierce. Many spellcasters lost their lives in order to protect the freedom of knowledge. The Fool, a boy who had only ever seek to live a simple life, decided, after seeing such horrors done to his fellow spellcasters, he would end the bloodshed. But of course, he had no powers to draw from, for he had led a life never expecting such dangers. And so he turned to the Crescent Library. He called upon any book that would aid him in this battle, asking to be granted power strong enough to defeat his enemies. In that moment, the Spellbook of the Master found him. This book had the power to bring out the fullest potential in a person, but it had a mind of its own, and a person with a weak constitution would be consumed by it. Upon its release, it sensed the overwhelming strength that the Fool was capable of, and immediately enveloped him, bringing out his fullest potential, and at the same time, also his worst. It twisted his mind, body and soul into a harbinger of death, known as the Reaper of Prophecy. The book had done what he had sought. Now, with immense power, he massacred the Enmion's forces, but he did not stop there. He continued to rampage throughout La Mason, attacking any of the spellcasters that got in his way. It was only until Hierophant and Empress determined to save his life that he was able to be stopped. Together, through the Spellbook of Judgment, they were able to force the light within the Fool to consume the dark. Although it was difficult, he was able to purge the dark magic that had turned him into the Reaper, and instead, through the light, he was reborn as the World, an angelic spirit. So now we know a little bit more about the background of the cards, how about we take a look at the rest of the archetype and see what card they represent. Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Batel, the Magical Spellbook Keeper. His effect is, if this card is normal summoned or flip face up, add one Spellbook spell from your deck to your hand. Magician of Prophecy is based on the Magician Tarot, and is associated with the number 1. The significance of the Magician can reveal, if it's upright, willpower, desire, creation, manifestation. If reversed, it can reveal trickery, illusion, or being out of touch. For reference, by the way, I'll be using a website called Labyrinthos for the card interpretations throughout this video, so if you'd like to find out a little bit more about each of the cards, then feel free to check it out. Also, for a little bit of fun, this was something that I did in the Arcana Force video, but I feel like we might as well do it again. Go on a dice rolling website and create a dice that has 22 sides. Roll that dice, and depending on what number you get, depends on what numbered tarot card you get from today's video. 22 will represent the Fool, rather than 0, of course. Then after that, flip a coin. Heads will represent upright, whereas tails will represent reversed. That will be, I guess, your tarot card reading. It's not the proper way you're supposed to do it, but I'd love to know what you guys get, and let me know if that relates to you at all, if you believe in tarot cards or anything, or if you think it's just got absolutely nothing to do with you. It could be quite fun, but give it a go if you fancy. High Priestess of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Junon, the Magical High Priestess. Her effect is you can reveal 3 Spellbook spells in your hand. Special summon this card from your hand. Once per turn, you can banish 1 Spellbook spell from your hand or graveyard, then target 1 card on the field, destroy that target. High Priestess of Prophecy is based on the High Priestess Tarot, and is associated with the number 2. The High Priestess reveals if it's upright, intuitive, unconscious, inner voice. If reversed, it shows a lack of center, a lost inner voice, or repressed feelings. Empress of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Trice the Magical Empress Saint. Requires 2 level 5 spellcaster type monsters. This card gains 300 attack for each Xyz material attached to a monster you control. Once per turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, shuffle your deck, then excavate the top 5 cards of your deck. Destroy monsters on the field up to the number of Spellbook cards you excavated. Also after that, place the excavated cards on the top of the deck in any order. Empress of Prophecy is based on the Empress Tarot, associated with the number 3. The Empress reveals, if upright, motherhood, fertility, and nature, whereas if it's reversed, it shows dependence, smothering, emptiness, and nosiness. Emperor of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Emperor, the Magical Emperor. His effect is you can banish both 1 face-up spellcaster type monster you control, except this card, and 1 Spellbook spell card from your graveyard to target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Take control of that target until the end phase. You can only use the effect of Emperor of Prophecy once per turn. This card cannot attack the turn you activate this effect. Emperor of Prophecy is based on the Emperor Tarot, associated with the number 4. The Emperor reveals, while upright, authority, structure, control, and fatherhood. When reversed, it shows tyranny, rigidity, and coldness. Hierophant of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Hieron the Magical Hierophant. Requires 2 level 7 spellcaster type monsters. His effect is, once per turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, destroy spell or trap cards your opponent controls up to the number of Spellbook spell cards in your graveyard. Hierophant of Prophecy is based on the Hierophant Tarot. Associated with the number 5, the Hierophant reveals, if upright, tradition, conformity, morality, and ethics, whereas if it's reversed, it reveals rebellion, subversiveness, and new approaches. Amours of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as L'Amour, the Magical Archer. His effect is, once per turn, you can reveal 1 Spellbook spell card in your hand. Special summon 1 level 4 or lower spellcaster type monster from your hand. Amours of Prophecy is based on the Lover's Tarot, associated with the number 6. The Lover reveals, if it's upright, partnerships, duality, and union. If reversed, it shows a loss of balance, one-sidedness, and disharmony. Charioteer of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Chariot the Magical Swordsman. His effect is, once per turn, you can discard 1 Spellbook spell card to target 1 spellcaster type monster in your graveyard, add that target to your hand. Charioteer of Prophecy is based on the Chariot Tarot, associated with the number 7. The Chariot reveals upright, direction, control, willpower. If reversed, it shows a lack of control, a lack of direction, and aggression. Strength of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Force the Magical Warrior. Once per turn, you can shuffle 1 Spellbook spell card from your graveyard into the deck to target 1 face-up spellcaster type monster on the field, increase its level by 1 and its attack by 500. Strength of Prophecy is based on the Strength Tarot, associated with the number 8. The Strength reveals, if upright, inner strength, bravery, compassion, and focus. If reversed, it shows self-doubt, weakness, and insecurity. Hermit of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Ermite the Magical Hermit. His effect is, each time a Spellbook spell card is activated, increase this card's level by 2 and attack by 300. Hermit of Prophecy is based on the Hermit Tarot. Associated with the number 9, the Hermit reveals, if upright, contemplation, a search for truth and inner guidance. If reversed, it shows loneliness, isolation, and losing your way. Wheel of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Rude the Magical Beast Master. When this card is special summoned by the effect of a spellcaster type monster, you can target any number of your banished Spellbook spell cards, shuffle them into the deck. And if you do, return your other banished Spellbook spell cards to your graveyard. You can only use the effect of Wheel of Prophecy once per turn. Wheel of Prophecy is based on the Wheel of Fortune Tarot. It is associated with the number 10 and reveals, if upright, changes, cycles, and an inevitable fate. Whereas if it's reversed, it shows no control, clinging to control, or just bad luck. Justice of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Shisti the Magical Teacher. During your end phase, if you activated a Spellbook spell card previously this turn, you can banish this card from your field, and both 1 level 5 or higher light or dark spellcaster type monster, and 1 Spellbook spell card from your deck to your hand. You can only use the effect of Justice of Prophecy once per turn. Justice of Prophecy is based on the Justice Tarot, associated with the number 11. The Justice reveals, if upright, cause and effect, clarity or truth. If it is reversed, it shows dishonesty, unaccountability, or even unfairness. Stoic of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Lepend the Magical Sorcerer. When this card is sent to the graveyard, add 1 level 3 prophecy monster from your deck to your hand. Stoic of Prophecy is based on the Hanged Man Tarot, associated with the number 12. The Hanged Man reveals if upright, sacrifice, release, or martyrdom. If reversed, it shows stalling, needless sacrifice, or the fear of sacrifice. Reaper of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Lamort the Magical Nevermaster. When this card is normal or special summon, you can activate this effect. Apply as many effects as possible based on the number of Spellbook spell cards with different names in your graveyard. You can only use the effect of Reaper of Prophecy once per turn. 3 or more, this card gains 600 attack. 4 or more, add 1 Spellbook spell card from your deck to your hand. 5 or more, special summon 1 level 5 or higher Dark Spellcaster type monster from your deck. Reaper of Prophecy is based on the Death Tarot, associated with the number 13. The Death reveals if upright, end of cycle, beginnings, change, or a metamorphosis. If it is reversed, it reveals a fear of change, holding on, or stagnation, or maybe even decay. Temperance of Prophecy, known in the Japanese as Temper the Magical Summoner. During your main phase, if you have activated a Spellbook spell card previously this turn, you can tribute this card. Special summon 1 level 5 or higher light or dark spellcaster type monster from your deck. You cannot special summon another level 5 or higher monster during the turn you activate this effect. Temperance of Prophecy is based on the Temperance Tarot. Associated with the number 14, the Temperance reveals if upright, a middle path, patience, finding meaning. If reversed, it shows extremes, excess, or a lack of balance. Prophecy Destroyer, known in the Japanese as Diabol the Magical Demon Knight. If this card is in your graveyard, you can banish 3 Spellbook spell cards from your graveyard. Special summon this card from your grave. Prophecy Destroyer is based on the Devil Tarot. Associated with the number 15, the Devil reveals if upright, addiction, materialism, playfulness. If reversed, it shows freedom, release, or restoring control. It's worth noting that this monster does seem to be quite distinct from the rest of the archetype, and this is actually revealed in a Pojo post by one of its creators. Prophecy Destroyer was once just a normal spellcaster who gained immortality from the spellbooks, but over time it became apparent that he needed to consume magical energy in order to sustain his immortality, and thus after thousands of years of surviving off magic alone, and watching all those around him die, he had effectively naturally become a hateful monster. I mean, if you were alive for thousands of years just sucking on magical energy all your entire life, I guess that'd make you evil. The Grand Spellbook Tower, known in the Japanese as Spellbook Institute Le Mason. Once per turn during your standby phase, if you have a spellcaster type monster on your side of the field or in your graveyard, you can place 1 Spellbook spell card from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck, except the Grand Spellbook Tower. Then draw 1 card. When this card in your possession is destroyed by your opponent's card and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 spellcaster type monster from your hand or deck whose level is less than or equal to the number of Spellbook spell cards in your graveyard. Take a shot every time I say the word spell throughout this video. The Grand Spellbook Tower is based on the Tower Tarot. Associated with the number 16, the Tower reveals if upright, sudden upheaval, broken pride, or disaster. If reversed, it shows disaster avoided, delayed disaster, or a fear of suffering. Spellbook Star Hall, known in the Japanese as Spellbook Hall Étoile. Each time a Spellbook spell card is activated, place 1 spell counter on this card. All spellcaster type monsters you control gain 100 attack for each spell counter on this card. When this card with spell counters is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 spellcaster type monster from your deck to your hand whose level is less than or equal to the number of spell counters that were on this card. Spellbook Star Hall is based on the Star Tarot. Associated with the number 17, the star reveals if upright, hope, faith, and rejuvenation. If reversed, it shows faithlessness, discouragement, and insecurity. Spellbook Library of the Crescent. If you have no Spellbook spell cards in your graveyard, reveal 3 Spellbook spell cards with different names from your deck. Your opponent randomly adds 1 of them to your hand, and shuffle the rest of them back into the deck. You can only activate 1 Spellbook Library of the Crescent per turn. You cannot activate any spell cards the turn you activate this card, except Spellbook spell cards. Spellbook Library of the Crescent is based on the Moon Tarot, associated with the number 18. The moon reveals if upright, unconscious, illusions, institution. If reversed, it shows confusion, fear, and misinterpretation. Spellbook Library of the Heliosphere, known in the Japanese as Spellbook Library Selene. If you have 5 or more Spellbook spell cards in your graveyard, excavate the top 2 cards of your deck. Add any excavated Spellbook spell cards to your hand. Also, shuffle the other cards into your deck. You can only activate 1 Spellbook library of the Heliosphere per turn. You cannot activate any spell cards the turn you activate this card, except Spellbook spell cards. Spellbook Library of the Heliosphere is based on the Sun Tarot and is associated with the number 19. The Sun reveals upright, joy, success, celebration, positivity. If reversed, it shows negativity, depression, and sadness. Spellbook of Judgment, known in the Japanese as Divine Judgment of the Spellbooks. Fun fact, this is the only banned Spellbook card at the time of this video. During the end phase of the turn this card was activated, add Spellbook spell cards from your deck to your hand, except Spellbook of Judgment, up to the number of spell cards activated after this card's resolution. Then you can special summon from your deck 1 spellcaster type monster whose level is less than or equal to the number of cards added to your hand by this effect. You can only activate 1 Spellbook of Judgment per turn. Spellbook of Judgment is based on the Judgment Tarot, associated with the number 20. The Judgment reveals, if upright, reflection, reckoning, awakening. If reversed, it shows a lack of self-awareness, doubt, or self-loathing. World of Prophecy. When this card is special summoned by the effect of a spellcaster type monster or a Spellbook spell card, you can target 2 Spellbook spell cards in your graveyard, add those targets to your hand. You cannot special summon other monsters during the turn you activate this effect. When you add cards to your hand by this effect, you can reveal 4 Spellbook spell cards with different names in your hand. Destroy all other cards on the field. World of Prophecy is based on the World Tarot, associated with the number 21. The World reveals, if upright, fulfillment, harmony, completion. If reversed, it shows incompletion and no closure. And with World of Prophecy, that is the last of the Major Arcana Tarot monsters. However, there is one more monster to talk about, and that is Crowley, the First Prophesier, known in the Japanese as Magical Original Text Crowley. It requires 2 spellcaster monsters. If this card is link summoned, you can reveal 3 spellbook cards with different names from your deck, and your opponent randomly picks 1 for you to add to your hand. Also, shuffle the rest into your deck. You can only use the effect of Crowley the First Prophesier once per turn. Each turn, 1 level 5 or higher spellcaster monster you normal summon can be summoned without tributing. This monster is the person who actually founded the Prophecy Spellcasters organization. This is known as the monster is named after a real world person called Aleister Crowley, who created a tarot card deck called the Thoth Tarot Deck, which is essentially the same as just a normal tarot deck except with his own updated illustrations on it. In fact, Crowley the First Prophesier actually has a very twisted history, which you can find out all about in his previous life as Aleister the Invoker in the Invoker Archetype video. Right, let's tear through the remainder of the Spellbook cards. Spellbook of Secrets, add 1 Spellbook card from your deck to your hand, except Spellbook of Secrets. You can only activate 1 Spellbook of Secrets per turn. Spellbook Organization, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, then return them to the top of the deck in any order. Spellbook of Eternity, target one of your banished Spellbook spell cards, except Spellbook of Eternity, add that targeted card to your hand. You can only activate 1 Spellbook of Eternity per turn. Spellbook of Fate, if you control a spellcaster type monster, you can banish up to 3 Spellbook spell cards from your graveyard, apply this effect depending on the number of spell cards banished for this card's activation. You can only activate 1 Spellbook of Fate per turn. 1. Return 1 set spell or trap on the field to the hand. 2. Change 1 monster on the field to face down defense position or face up attack position. 3. Banish 1 card your opponent controls. Spellbook of Knowledge. Send to the graveyard either 1 spellcaster monster you control or 1 other spell card from your hand or face up from your field except Spellbook of Knowledge. And if you do, draw 2 cards. You can activate 1 Spellbook of Knowledge per turn. Spellbook of Life. Banish 1 spellcaster type monster from your graveyard and reveal 1 other Spellbook spell card in your hand to target 1 spellcaster type monster in your graveyard. Special summon that target in face up attack position and equip it with this card. The equipped monster's level is increased by the level of the monster that was banished by this card's activation. You can activate 1 Spellbook of Life per turn. Spellbook of Miracles. Target 1 spellcaster type Xyz monster in your graveyard and up to 2 of your banished Spellbook spell cards. Special summon that monster, and if you do, attach the targeted Spellbook spell cards to its Xyz material. You can activate 1 Spellbook of Miracles per turn. Spellbook of Power. Target 1 spellcaster type monster you control. This turn, it gains 1000 attack, and if it does, each time it destroys an opponent's monster by battle this turn, you can add 1 Spellbook spell card from your deck to your hand. You can only activate 1 Spellbook of Power per turn. Spellbook of Wisdom. Target one spellcaster monster on the field, then activate one of these effects. That face-up monster is unaffected by other spell effects this turn. That face-up monster is unaffected by trap effects this turn. Spellbook of the Master. If you control a spellcaster type monster, you can reveal one other spellcaster card in your hand, then target one Spellbook normal spell card in your graveyard, except Spellbook of the Master. This card's effect becomes that target's effect. You can activate one Spellbook of the Master per turn. Finally, Hidden Spellbook. During your turn, target two spell cards in your graveyard, shuffle those targets into the deck. Oh my god, I never want to say the word spell ever again. We had to say spell card, spellbook, spellcaster, spell counters, like a million times in this video. Holy hell. Oh, that was knackering. But guys, that was the Spellbook Prophecy Archetype done. It was a big one. I'm sorry it was very, very long, but I hope you all enjoyed regardless. Before we go, I want to give a big, massive thank you to the people that help support me on Patreon and help me make these videos possible. Big shout out first and foremost to my platinum backers, Yugioh97, J24092, and Terrence Harrod. Guys, thank you very much. As well to my YouTube and gold Patreon backers, Silver Defender, David Shanahan, Goosey Q, Matthew Braithwaite, Yugioh Everything, Chungming Zen, James Forge, and You Do. Guys, thank you very much for supporting the channel. As well to all of my silver backers, thank you all so much. You help keep things going over here, and I appreciate all you guys. Guys, catch you all later. I hope you enjoyed.